This is Nicholas Junker, and this is my presentation for Module 16, Case Study for Parental Apathy. A little bit of background on the case. It's at John F. Kennedy School. It does not mention whether it is a middle school, high school, elementary school. My assumption would be middle school and high school, but it could be an elementary school as well. Details the trials and tribulations of Mrs. Rose, who is a brand new administrator. She just graduated from her administrative program, and this is her first position. The issues that she is handling or dealing with is low parental involvement. There's no parent organization to speak of, and her principal is hesitant to embrace or to try to reach out to the community due to some past issues. A brief summary of the case is that in the past they've had a very limited program, almost no community or parental involvement. There has been some in the past, but not in the most recent past. And due to this, as I prefaced in the next bullet, the principal is kind of burned out by those prior attempts. He feels as if he is, through his engagement previously, he's been left out in the cold by himself. And so due to that, he feels that his current level of engagement through phone calls and parent-teacher conferences, he has been able to garner enough community support. And our main character in this scenario is Mrs. Rose, and she does not agree with that assessment. She wants greater community involvement and engagement. And also the principal will finally agree to reaching out, even though he is hesitant. He finally agrees, and through his agreement, what he has done is he's gave the students a brief announcement inviting parents to a school meeting talking about active engagement. And at this meeting, there was a very small turnout. There was 8 parents only, and for their school, this is not an active turnout, and they wanted to decide whether or not they should go forward because it's not an active representation of the community with only 8 members. So going forward, our problem identification and analysis, category 1, what do I know, what I need to know, and the problem. What do I know? There is little to no parent involvement, and definitely not a parent organization. We have a new assistant principal pushing for community and parental involvement. Issues with the principal, who is content with the status quo, attempting to do it as he wishes and not engaging community collaboration. Though one other thing that I know is that we have one attempted contact with the parents to try to get them involved, but at this juncture, not a lot of involvement. So things that I need to know. School and community demographics. It is important to be able to know before you attack a problem what you're dealing with. Things like economic indicators, racial composition, education levels. I think education levels are important because it shows the value of what people place on the education. I'd also like to know what the administrator has fully went forward with on some of the parent organizations, as getting that context allows us to make decisions going forward. And one of the other things is there any community engagement going forward? Do they actively support something? Do they actively support Scholars Bowl or basketball or football? And if so, how are they engaged in those activities? And also, what forms of involvement would the principal be willing to support? He seems that he's not ready to actively engage in the community, but what levels is he ready to possibly engage in? So the problem is, and as I prefaced before, limited parental involvement. Our principal is hesitant, sometimes seemingly apathetic. We have one attempt at communication, so I think it's also a communication channel mistake. It was delved out by the students and not in multiple facets, multiple communication channels, and we got to appeal to them more, not just one time and it's over. So category 2, our proposed plan of action. I think the first thing that needs to take place is an active discussion with principals and administrative team, along with possibly even the Board of Education. It is important to show everybody in this process, in the decision-making hierarchy, that it is important for them to engage and understand the value of the relationship that can be had in the community. The second step would be to have a community-wide meeting which all stakeholders are involved. I think it is vital to be able to meet them where they are, through whether it's at a festival, whether it's at a gathering that garners huge support. It is important to be able to meet them in a place where they're comfortable, so that way you can develop that plan. And so through that involvement and engagement, we can develop a communication plan where they feel comfortable engaging students and engaging the community as well. And like I prefaced before in step one, I think it's important that the community members know, as well as the administrative team, the possibilities of beneficial reciprocal relationship. I want to make sure that I said that because communities benefit when schools benefit, and I think that's important. And so, and the rest of the steps I think that are important are creating opportunities for members of the community to be engaged in school activities, push for foundation of parent organization. I think that's one of the most important. The principal is hesitant to create an organization, but I think he was comfortable with an advisory board. And so I think if that's the first step, then that's the first step. And also create opportunities for students to engage individuals outside of the school setting. When people see that your students are out in the community, they're able to engage in a much greater way. So continuing category 2 are strategies for implementation. It's just bringing everybody together. It doesn't just have to be one member of the community, one member of the school. It needs to be everybody engaged in the process. And I think that is so important to get all voices to be heard. Secondly, we need to outline opportunities, which could be our first major communication / event type idea. We have got to be able to, there's no second chances at a first impression. So we've got to get the best possible opportunity to engage our community. We also need to promote that meeting through a variety of communication channels, and which is one of our not successes before, is they just told the students to tell their parents. We've got to get things in the newspaper, the TV, social media, any outlet that you can get your message forward is important. We also need to attempt to have a meeting in conjunction with that widely held activity. In our community, we have a festival, it's called Watermelon Festival, and there are times and issues where we could finally fit that in. I think that would be important. And at that meeting, it is important for us to ask input and cultivate discussion and collaboration in an open discussion. Like I said, the more brains you have trying to solve problems in your community and your school, the better. And also, as I prefaced before, we'd like to get a foundation of parent organization. If that's an advisory group, that's fine. But it needs to be coupled with, I think, with active engagement from a teacher administrator advisory committee. So the third category here is resolve issues based on promoting the success of all students. One of the things that is most important is making sure that you're making decisions with students in mind. And so I think one of the most important things you can do, especially with community and school relations, is to facilitate and promote strong, positive relationships. Students feed off how adults react and interact with each other. And I think that's could be one of our issues in the 21st century is adults aren't interacting as much. And I think that's one of the things we have to show our students going forward. Secondly, I think you have to create a culture of active engagement in the community and the school. As I prefaced before, you need to get your kids out in the community, you need to get your teachers out in the community, and you need to get your community in your school building. And through that, you can make positive progress. We also need to encourage the development of social characteristics. Students are going to go out in the world, they're going to spend 10, 12 years in your school. You need to prepare them for those 50, 60, 70 years that they're going to live outside of your school. And you do a disservice if you're not. And also you need to create opportunities for involvement among all facets of your society, not just the wealthy, not just the poor. Everybody needs to be involved and engaged. Democrat, Republican, black, white, whatever. They need to be all engaged in collaborating and making positive movement for your school. So I'm going to debrief the problem. This is category 4. Thoughts, feelings, and values. My thoughts are much better ways to communicate with stakeholders. There are much better ways. You also need to reach out to prominent community members. The principal can be the issue or the problem. I think that his issues with struggling with the active engagement is he's been burnt before. Some of the feelings are I have empathy for Mrs. Rose because she seems like she's a first year and she's struggling a little bit to engage with the principal and also the community. Something I'm worried about as well is a complacent attitude of the principal. He seems like he's ready for the status quo and he's just going to accept what comes. I'm also saddened by the lack of parental motivation and support, as that seems to be the common sense going forward, and we want to change that status quo. Issues also that I feel in debriefing the problem are my values. As I was saying, it is vital to have a commitment to the community. Small communities, neighborhood schools, they work best together when they work together. It's also important to me in my values of social equity and equality, making sure that individuals can collaborate and contribute in a variety of different settings. Also, it's important to me is developing relationships, making sure that people are able to engage and collaborate in all settings. And the last and final value is professionalism. That is, when you go about making sure that you're solving problems, professionalism is the most important and one of the most important things. Continuing with category 4, unresolved issues. First one is how to get initial engagement or communication. How do we actively engage our community to get them to come to it? As our principals had struggles with that before Mrs. Rose came, we need to be able to try to find a way to get them involved. The second is principal hesitancy burnout. That kind of fits in with the first one. We have to be able to find a way to, what is he comfortable with? He said advisory group. We have to find a way to make sure that he wants to make sure that we are positively going forward and doing it his way, while also making sure that we get collaborative stakeholders involved. We'd like to get a parental organization developed and off the ground, but it kind of depends on our principal and what he's comfortable with. And the last one is we need to make sure that we develop a plan for involvement going forward. So category 5, we're going to reflect on our standards, promote success going forward. I will address these 3 questions in the next 3. So standard component 1, the question is, how did you, as the educational leader, promote the academic success of every student while addressing the issues revealed in the parental apathy case study? So the three things that I think that I focus on to make sure that we have academic success are, 1, promoting strong relationships with parents and the community. Students will be supported if they are able to be engaged with fiscal and material resources for learning. Teachers a lot of times have to pay out of their own pocket, and if you have a community that is able to support you in that way, that will be tremendous going forward. Secondly, through the encouragement of collaboration, stakeholders will be actively engaged in your curriculum and goal setting of the community and school and district. I think it's so important to make sure that we have that community buy-in, that ownership, because if they're able to buy in and ownership on what you're doing day to day in your classroom, they'd be much more likely. Also, the third thing is I need to build bridges with students by giving 21st century learning opportunities. I think that if kids can get out in the community, work at local businesses, have CTE opportunities, they will be stronger going forward. Standard component 2 is how did you as the educational leader promote the personal well-being of every student while addressing the issues in the case? I have 3 points for this as well. Through the development of strong social skills, we'll be able to actively engage stakeholders and process our students as we continue to make them better going forward. Their personal well-being will be strongly enriched by developing those social skills through community engagement. And the second one kind of ties into that. Students will be able to develop and promote their relationship making abilities going forward, right? We are all about teaching 21st century skills, and if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that they're ready going forward. The last point is by fostering positive relationship with community members, we'll be able to learn to reciprocate it when it becomes their turn. The students are going to spend only a short amount of time of their lives in this community, and so going forward, we're going to make sure that we're able to make them an active members of the community. Standard component 3. How did you as the educational leader promote communities of engagement for families and other stakeholders in the school's community while addressing the issues revealed in the parental apathy case study? I have 3 points for this as well. By fostering collaboration and feedback from stakeholders, the relationship between school and community will be greatly strengthened. It is important to develop that collaboration and feedback, as if they're able to give a give and take relationship, students and community will be positively impacted. Secondly, by employing multiple channels of communication, as we did not do in the case study, we will be able to actively engage more stakeholders. You have older generations who just read the newspaper, all the way down to teenagers who are using Instagram. If you can appeal to them on all facets, you'll be greater, and you'll be able to participate greater in that communication. And then finally, through engaging members of the community on their terms. Like I said, I think the most important thing the schools need to do, and they don't do a great job of, is engaging people where they are. As a teacher, I try to make sure that I hit all learning modalities. As an administrator, you do the same thing. You need to make sure that you engage people where they are and where they're going to be, so that way you can make that progress going forward. Thank you for watching my video.